Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor. I'd like to introduce you to a simple Lightroom workflow for beginners. Best thing to do before we start is just make sure that all of the other programs that we may have had running are closed down, and you'll also see here I have a backup drive connected to my computer. Ideally this should be a USB 3 drive, and also if you can access an SSD drive that would be even better. Okay, I'm going to open up my Lightroom by clicking on the Lightroom icon in my dock. You could alternatively just go to your applications folder and double click on the application icon there. If you hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac, it'll actually show you any other catalogs that you've been using, and we can switch between different catalogs. You don't have to put everything in a single catalog, and typically in order to keep my optimum performance I will start a new catalog every year. So I'm going to come down and click on the Create a New Catalog button here. It's going to ask me to give this catalog a name, so I'm just going to put the year 2015, and also it'll want to put it into the pictures folder by default on my computer, and that's okay. So we'll just hit the word create there and wait for Lightroom to open. Now of course Lightroom won't have any images in because this is a brand new catalog. If you need a little bit of a helping hand to get to know your way around Lightroom, then you can come to the Help menu and switch on these library module tips. Okay, so and that will give you a little a tour around the interface here. Basically we've got the panels on the left. We can control that with the F7 key. And also we've got the panels on the right with the F8, and we also have the option to run a film strip on the bottom, which is F6. We have a toolbar on the bottom here which we can hide or show using the letter T on the keyboard. I would prefer to keep that permanently in view. Okay. Now the first thing we want to do is take a look at some of the preferences. If we go up to the Lightroom menu in the Mac, this will be the Edit menu on a PC. We can come down to Preferences, and these are the preferences for all of the catalogs that we create on this computer. Now if you are a beginner, I would change the color space from Pro Photo to sRGB. Okay, and also the bit depth from 16 to 8 bits per channel. Okay, if you're a bit more experienced, you may change those options at a later date. I'm also using the file format TIFF. This is for external editing. This is not editing inside of Lightroom. Okay, pretty much all of the other settings are good to go. The other thing that is specific to this catalog is the catalog settings, and again if you're working on a PC this will be in the Edit menu. And typically a couple of things we want to check is in the General tab here. I would prefer to choose every time Lightroom exits I have the option of backing up the catalog. Okay, now you can skip that, but it's a great option if you've spent all day on Lightroom. All of your work is backed up, so there's no danger of losing that. Also in the file handling, the standard preview size here is 1440 pixels. That actually is the resolution of this MacBook Air that I'm using, but if you're using a Retina display or a large desktop monitor such as a 27-inch monitor, you're going to want to increase that to the 2880 pixels for your standard preview, and the rest of the options are good to go again. Now up in the top left hand corner we have the identity plate. We can actually change that from the default Lightroom and actually create a customized identity plate there. That's just an optional extra. One of the things that you can do with an Adobe Creative Cloud account is also sign in. This allows you to share some of the work from your collections inside of Lightroom onto live web galleries where you can get feedback and comments from. Okay, I'm going to leave that off for the time being. We're just going to give a basic tour at the moment. Okay, so let's go straight down to the Import menu here. Okay, now the Import menu will open. Okay, and it's quite a daunting box, but basically we're looking at the top. We're going to select a source, we're going to choose what to do with the file, and then move over to the right hand side, which is where we're going to store the images that are being referenced in the catalog. Now I can cancel this because one of the default options inside of Lightroom is if I insert a camera memory card into my computer, which is what I'm doing now, then the import dialog box should automatically open. If it doesn't for whatever reason, just click on that import tab. Now you'll see the device here is the memory card, and I've renamed my memory card A6000 because this is a Sony A6000 camera I'm using. I've also got the option to eject the card after import. They're JPEG files, so the option that we should be choosing here is just to copy them. Okay, and we're moving over and we're choosing to store these on the hard drive. But where on the hard drive? We're going to open up this destination panel here, and instead of just storing them in named or dated folders in my pictures folder, I'm actually going to store them in my 2015 catalog, and you can see that down in here. I'll just click on that, and so the images that are going to be stored with this catalog are going to be with the actual catalog files, the data files that drive this catalog. And because I don't want this folder to get too busy, I'm going to put all of my images into a subfolder, and I'm going to call this subfolder images. Okay, now the date format I'm using, okay, is in the bottom section here, and it's just the year, month and day, and this is a logical way of creating a database inside of Lightroom. And let's just close that panel by clicking on it. Okay, we've got a little bit more work to do before we import them, and one of the things I would recommend that you do is click on Build Smart Previews. This allows us to edit files even when they're stored offline on external drives that are not connected to our working computer. They will add 1 or 2 megabytes per image, so you will need to keep a little bit of spare capacity on your hard drive, but this is a really useful option. I also recommend that you create backup files. Okay, now I have that external drive connected, and you'll see that they're going to go to this external drive into a folder called Backups. Now the only reason you won't export them to your actual computer is if you're really running out of space or hard drive capacity. Your destination might change to an external drive, and we could pick that up by coming up to Other Destination and choosing maybe a backup drive in order to store the files connected to this catalog. Now if you are going to store your files on an external drive and back up these files, you'll need 2 external drives connected to your computer at this stage. Okay, I would prefer to keep enough spare capacity on the computer to run a whole catalog for maybe 6 months or more without having to take those images offline. Okay, so ideally I would try and free up 100 gigabytes of hard drive space, especially when we're choosing to shoot in the raw file format. Okay, so the couple of other things that we need to do, file renaming. Okay, now we can just go with the file name, which is the number, but if you're running more than one camera, you'll bump into the problem where 2 files with the same name or number have been shot with different cameras. And what I'd like to do here is just put in the name of the camera. Okay, so if I'm shooting with another different camera, I can have 2 different files, both with the same number, with a different prefix of which camera they came from. Okay, we'll leave everything as is. Now, probably one of the most important aspects of the import is to add keywords. This will allow us to find these files in years to come, long after we've forgotten when we captured them, or which hard drive they've been archived to. Okay, so keywords, I'm going to put in my daughter's name here, and it's a portrait, and I've captured them at home. Try and think of three key words that you can use that will describe the contents of this memory card or this shoot that we've got going here. And now we're ready to import. Okay, so the files will be coming in. They'll also be being backed up to my external drive, and smart previews are being created. Now I don't need to see this film strip at the moment, so I'm just going to press the F6 key to hide that from view. Now you can see in the folders section here we have this dated folder with these 7 files in. Now if we right click on this folder and hit show parent folder, you'll see that this is actually placed inside of that images folder that I created on that import. If I click on that images folder and right click one more time and hit show parent, you'll see they're in the 2015 catalog folder that I created when I created this new catalog. If I click on that and right click and do show in Finder, we'll see that any sort of hierarchy of folder structures is being replicated on my computer's hard drive. Pictures, 2015, and here is the images folder, and here is the import catalog. Now the important thing to remember when we choose to run a database system is we'll never open these files from our computer's operating system. We won't rename them, move them, or delete them. That will only confuse the database. We can do all of those operations, renaming, deleting, moving, all inside of Lightroom, and Lightroom will then keep track of all of our images and we'll never lose another image folder or image again. Okay, so just remember we're working with a hierarchy that is replicated on the computer's operating system here. Okay, let's go and import another set of files, slightly different files this time. Instead of from a memory card, which as you can see has been ejected, I'm going to import them from my pictures folder. I've got an import folder here. Now you'll see these files that we've just imported previously, they've now become grayed out. And that's because in the file handling options here, we've got the option don't import suspected duplicates checked. So we won't get 2 files of the same in the working catalog. Let's just open this folder. I've got some more folders here. We've got some raw files this time. Now instead of copying these files, we're actually going to convert them to DNG. So we're going to copy them, so we're going to get a new version of this file, but it's going to be converted from the proprietary raw file format, in this case Sony's ARW file format, and we're going to convert them into Adobe's DNG or digital negative raw file format. Now one of the many advantages of this is they will actually load faster in Lightroom, and it's worth doing it just for that. Okay, so we're moving over. Okay, we'll see the file handling is as before. It's remembered our preferences. File renaming, however, this is a different model camera, so I'm going to type in A99, and that's the model number of this Sony camera. The destination is still going into that images folder in my 2015. It's remembered my preferences from the last import. What will set these images apart from the others, however, are the keywords. This will help me find these images instead of other images. Okay, so the name of this location is Tarawara. It is a gallery and it is in the Yarra Valley. Okay, and that should be enough to help me find these files. Okay, it's always probably worth just double checking that you've got your spelling correct. Obviously when we're looking for them, that will help. Okay, and so now we're ready to import these files. We just click on the import button. You'll see as they're importing, it'll take slightly longer this time because there is a conversion process. It's also detected that there's a GPS device inside of this camera, as there are in mobile phones as well. And so if we click on the word enable and then OK, we will find that this GPS data can be used also to find the images later. For instance, with one of these images selected, if I move over to the map module, you'll see that this image will be located on a map. And I can see that I've taken 5 images in this location. And this is an excellent way of also helping to organize our images. If you don't have a GPS device in a camera, you can actually use one image from a mobile phone and then transfer that GPS information into other images captured with your interchangeable lens camera. Okay, so let's go back to the library module there, and you can see that we have another folder here. Let's do another import routine here. Okay, we'll move and select another folder. Okay, these are portrait images again of my daughter Tegan. What we're going to do this time is also copy as DNG. Moving over, again all of the settings are as before, except this, we're back to the A6000 mirrorless camera now. Apply during import. These are going to carry some of the same keywords as we used last time, except the location will differentiate this. For instance, I'm putting in Fitzroy Gardens here. Okay, again just double check the spelling is okay, and the destination. Now they're going into the images folder. We can actually increase the amount of organization in our catalog at this stage. If I do a lot of portraiture photography, I could actually create a folder called Portraits, and this will still go inside of my 2015 catalog file, but we'll separate them out from other images. Okay, so we're ready to import these. Okay, so we'll just click on the import button, and on the left hand side you'll see we now have another folder or subfolder called Portraits. Now if we go back to one of the other folders I created here, we'll see that these are also portraits. If I'd prefer to organize these into the Portraits folder, I can just click and drag them into our Portraits folder. Now that action will be mirrored on our computer's operating system, so we shouldn't move those files on our computer's operating system. We let Lightroom do the organization here. Okay, if we move that folder outside of Lightroom, then we'll get a question mark over the folder's location, and we'll have to browse and relink that new folder location. Okay, but there's no need to do that because we can do all of those operations inside of Lightroom. Let's import another folder of images. Okay, so we'll move over to 103. And again, the things that will separate this is the type of camera. This is one of Sony's full frame mirrorless cameras, the A7S. It's Hamilton Island, and it's an anniversary, and I've spelled that wrong, so we'll just drop in the S there. Okay, anniversary. Okay, good. And we can also drop in another keyword. We could drop in perhaps a barrier reef or something in order just to help us remember and relocate these files. Okay, destination. Okay, is in we're going to want to go, this obviously isn't portraits, so we'll just change that back to the images folder there. Okay, and hit the import. Okay, so these files will quickly come in again. Now we've shown how we can create subfolders on import, but we can also create folders actually in this folders panel here. All I have to do is come over and click on the master folder, the 2015 folder there. Remember, right click to show the parent folder if this is not visible. and then just hit the plus symbol, add subfolder, and we can choose landscapes. Okay, and we'll hit create. Now we have an empty landscapes folder, but you can see that on this last import it's actually created multiple folders because these were shot on different days, and I can drag these two landscape images into my landscapes folder. Okay, so let's just import a couple more images and we'll be finished with the importing in this catalog creation here, and it'll be two Photoshop documents. Now I don't want to convert these as to DNGs. They're multi-layered Photoshop files with text layers here. All I want to do is to add them. Now if I'm adding them, I'm not going to be given options for renaming. I want to keep the original names, and I can also add them in their original location. These will not be placed in with any files that I'm capturing this year from the cameras that I want to be archived. Okay, this is just a way of including images that may be TIFF files or PSD files into my catalog. Okay, so let's just import these or add them to the catalog. You'll see that they, if I show the parent folder of these PSD files, show parent folder, they're in an import folder, and the parent of that, show parent folder, will be my pictures folder, okay, on my computer's operating system. Okay, so let's take a look. We'll just double click one of these files. I'll press the F7 key in order to maximize the screen real estate here. I'll also hide the information that's appearing in the top left hand corner by pressing the I key. Okay, if we press the I key again, we'll get slightly different information and cycle through information. Okay, if we don't really want to see this white title bar on a Mac interface, we can also hold down the Shift key and press the F key, and that allows us to hide that window. If I press Shift F again, I can actually go full screen, and we can still access those menus just by moving our mouse cursor to the top of the screen. You'll notice on this slide I actually have a useful link here from Adobe's website, which has some tutorials about how to manage your photos inside of a catalog. I however want to stress the import ABC here, which is to always add keywords. Never get into a situation where you're just in a hurry to see your images and you say, oh, I'll keyword them later. You can add keywords after you've imported them, but it's so easy then to forget to add them and then have difficulty finding those images in the months and years to come. Okay, backing up files. Okay, always back up your files so that if your computer has a meltdown or is stolen, you always have a backup on an external drive. And remember, if we're storing our files on an external drive, we need to have two external drives plugged in during this process. Okay, now in this particular workflow that I'm addressing here, I'm collating all of the assets onto a single drive in a single folder. Now I'll show you why we're doing that. I'll just go back, I'll press the G key to go back into grid, and I'll just press the F7 key to bring up that panel. Okay, this is my 2015 catalog. Okay, I can see that on my computer's hard drive just by going show in Finder. Now if I ever want to back up this catalog, maybe I'm running out of space on my computer and I need to put it onto an external drive and start a new catalog, I can just click and drag this single folder icon onto a backup drive. Now that will contain all of the images and the data files. These are the previews and smart previews and the actual catalog file itself, and that will push all of those files onto an external drive with one single click and drag. Okay, so that's the beauty of collating all of these files into a single working folder. It is possible, however, with Lightroom to have your file spread across 5 external drives and in all sorts of locations on your desktop and in your pictures folder. This is a workflow that is a little bit of a recipe for confusion and frustration later, so I would definitely recommend collating your files. Okay, in the second half of this movie tutorial, what I'd like to do is now show you how we can start managing and finding some of our images inside of this catalog. Okay, so I'm going to hide this parent folder. I don't actually need to see this, and it just creates a hierarchy that is a little bit complex here. So I'm just going to hide this parent here. And this will probably be enough for me to work with now that I've got the 2015 and also the images that I added rather than collating in with my 2015 captures here. Okay, now let's take a look at how we can choose some images and group these into images together from separate days. Okay, for instance, in my portraits captured in Fitzroy Gardens here, I've got some particular favorites that I want to find and then rank so that I know which ones I prefer later. Now typically we can go into full screen view. You can press the E key on the keyboard. Well, E for loop doesn't really work, but you could say E for enlarge, or you could just double click in order to view the image. If we don't really need to work with this left hand panel, we could just click on the arrow or press the F7 key to hide that. And then I'm going to use the arrow keys on the keyboard to cycle through. Alternatively, I can use the film strip here, and this allows me to click on the different images. Now I'm happy just to cycle through using the arrows on the keyboard. I like this image. I'm going to give it 1 star. Don't get too excited with giving 5 stars just because you love it. We can always build up the stars later, but if you give it 5 now, I've got nowhere else to go. So I'm just going to give this 1. I prefer the Tegan looking at me. I like the hand stopping the wind blowing a hair across her face there. That's going to be a 1. I've got a friend Abhijit filming me there, so we won't rate that one. And this one's got really shallow depth of field, very wide aperture, and I like that one as well, so we'll press 1. And then I'll return to grid view just by pressing the letter G for grid. Okay, now I'll bring up this panel on the left hand side because there's some other portraits I also want to choose of Tegan in another folder here. And we'll just go into full screen and hide that panel on the left. Okay, background's a little bit busy. I think I took the mirror off that wall. This is quite a nice image, but maybe I like that cheeky smile a little bit better, so I'm going to give that one 1, and a little bit more serious, but that's also very nice, so I'll give that one 1 as well, and go back to my grid. Now if at any time I think that these are just a little bit dark, I can go in and process these in the develop module, but we have what's called a quick develop over here. If I just want to see what they look like a little bit brighter, I can just bump them brighter and use that single backspace arrow just to come back a little bit, and that's actually quite nice. Now let's go back into grid view. Now if I want to just only see the star ratings inside of this folder, all I need to do is to come up to the filter bar here. Now if this filter bar is not visible, just use the backslash key, okay, and that will hide or show that. It's also accessible from the view menu here, show filter bar, if we lose that. Now if I just go into attribute, we can just click on 1 star, and that will only show me the 1 star images inside of this folder. Okay, if we go back and hit on the portraits there, now it's going to show me, because there's 2 subfolders in this portraits, it's going to show me all of the 1 stars inside of this master or parent folder. Okay, so that is quickly a way of reducing the number to just my favorite images there, and I'm looking at them together there. Okay, so let's just click off the stars in order to see all of the images. Okay, and let's bring up that left-hand panel. Let's see if we can find an image of Tarawara, except I've forgotten when I captured it because it was a couple of years ago. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to either click on my parent folder here, 2015. Remember, right click if you can't see that and choose show parent, or alternatively we can go to the catalog panel here and choose all photographs. And instead of using an attribute such as a star rating or a type of file, we'll just go into text. This is a bit like Googling a photograph. We're just going to type in Tarawara, and I haven't even finished typing the word, and because Tarawara is such an unusual name, it's brought up those images with just that part of the keyword already. Now if I don't know which folder these are living in, all I need to do is right click, go to folder in library, and it tells me that I photographed these on the 22nd of September in 2012. Now I can find these files even if I've moved this folder offline onto an external drive. So long as Lightroom did that process, I will be able to access this thumbnail, this preview, and if I have a smart preview, I'll be able to carry on editing the look of the image and optimizing the image without even the original being connected to my computer. And that's the advantage of the smart preview. Okay, so let's come back into the grid with the left panel showing. Now we did have in the portraits folder, and obviously there doesn't seem to be any images in the portraits folder now, and that's because we've got a search filter in process. So just remember to cancel any filtering so that we can see the images in this folder. Okay, it's a popular source of confusion for Lightroom users. You're finding something and then you've forgotten to clear those searchable fields there. Okay, so now we can use go back to the attribute, choose the 1 star. Now what I can actually do is if I hover over the thumbnail here, you'll see a small circle there. This will do what's called put these images into a quick collection. So there's a way of grouping images together. Alternatively, you can just press the letter B, and you'll see that in the quick collection I start adding those images, or I could select multiple images. I'll just hold down the Shift key and select B, and quickly we'll top up that quick collection to 5 images. Now if I want to create a permanent collection, this is a way of grouping photographs together from different dates without physically moving them. It wouldn't make much sense to move something that was shot last year into a folder with this year's date on. So okay, so let's we'll create a collection from these 5 images. Okay, I'll just do Command A or Control A on a PC to select all of the images in this quick collection, and then we'll just hit the little plus symbol in the collections and choose Create Collection, and I'll call this collection Tegan. Now we do have the option, if the images are already selected, to automatically put these into the collection which will live down here. Now we can only have one quick collection, but we can have as many individual collections as we like. And so now these images will be grouped together even though they're from 2 separate folders. Now it's important to stress that these images haven't actually, the master files actually haven't been copied, so we don't have 2 files taking up extra space on our hard drive. They're just being referenced twice in 2 different places, the folders and the collections. If I make a change to the visual appearance here in one, that change will be replicated in the master folder. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can also create a collection without having a quick collection in process. I don't have any images selected now. I've just clicked away from those thumbnails. I'm going to click on New Collection, Create Collection. I'll call it Landscapes. These will be my favorite landscapes. Okay, so we don't, because there are no images selected, we don't have that as an option. We'll just hit Create and it'll be an empty collection. Now I can go to various folders that may have landscapes, and there's no stars in this folder, so just click off the stars and let's take a look at this image. Beautiful image, probably needs a little bit more vibrance in the color, so I'm just going to bump up the colors there. Just going to hit that 3 times, and also the contrast there. Okay, and we can then drag that image. Okay, we can drag it in the loop view, or into this view. We can drag that in to my landscapes folder there, and we can then search for other landscapes that we may have taken. This is not strictly a landscape. Let's just drag that in to my landscapes folder there. Okay, so sorry, that's not a folder, that's a collection, because we got 2 images from 2 different folders now in the same place. Okay, let's take a look at how we can now share the images. We've looked at how we can organize images. We've done a tiny little bit of editing, but we'll save the full develop module to another movie. But what we're going to do now is look at how we can share these images. Okay, so let's go to one of my collections. I'll go to one of these images that I've looked at here. Now we can hit the export button. Okay, this is a way of creating a copy with any of the processing that we've done to the file. I'll just bump up the exposure a little bit. Okay, so this is a modified version. We could also change things like the treatment from color to black and white. Okay, so a nice black and white image there, and we can now choose to export this as a copy. Now it's important to stress with a catalog, a non-destructive working environment, we actually haven't changed the pixel values of this image. Okay, at any time, doesn't matter how much editing we've done, we can always hit the reset button and come back to the original file. I'll just do Command or Control Z on a PZ to go back to that black and white version. If I look at that image, right click and show in Finder, you'll see that that image in the computer operating system window here, take a look at that. I'll just enlarge that image so you can see, or you can probably see there already. The image is a DNG file and it hasn't been processed. It shows none of the processing that Lightroom has managed. Okay, the image the operating system is ignorant of the changes that Lightroom is making, and this is why we should always open images from Lightroom. For instance, I can right click and edit in and choose an external editor like Photoshop here, and those changes will appear in Photoshop because I'm not opening the image from the operating system. I'm using Lightroom to perform that action. Okay, so we can hit the export button here, and we can choose one of the presets that Lightroom already gives us, or we can actually make our own presets. You don't have to make a preset, but if you're constantly exporting images at a certain size to a certain location on your computer, it makes sense to create a preset. So this export process is a very painless one. Let's for instance start with one of the Lightroom presets here for email or hard drive. It's going to invite us to choose a folder when we export the image. It won't specify the same folder each time, and that's really useful for presets, as it says in the brackets. I'm going to leave the file naming as is. This is not a video. We're going to use JPEG and sRGB if this is going up to the social media, but we're going to increase the quality up to a high 90 there for really optimum quality, and the size is a little bit small for modern computers, so I'm going to put 2048 pixels and 2048 pixels. You could just alternatively choose the long edge for that. Now this won't make a square image, it'll just make sure that the longest edge fits into 2048, and the height will always not exceed 2048 either. Okay, so you can add a small amount of sharpening on export, but typically I will sharpen in the develop module. So this becomes my new preset. I can add it, and I'll call this, I'll put that in the user presets, and I'll call it Facebook. And I might already have one, so I'll just call it Facebook 2, and we'll hit the create there. And as you can see, Facebook 2. So whenever I'm exporting images that may be going up to Facebook later, I just click on this preset and hit export. And when I export, I can choose a source folder, for instance the desktop. I can choose a folder that's on the desktop or create a new one here, and this will be Tegan, and we hit create and select open, and then the file will be processed into that folder. Okay, we also have an option, and as you can see we're getting a true reflection of the processing inside that we've done inside of Lightroom. That is now a copy of the master. Now you can actually manage that using the computer's operating system, because this copy file isn't in the catalog. Okay, it's not referenced by the library, and so it doesn't really matter whether we open that in an external application or move that around or rename it, because it's not in the catalog. Okay, it was exported from the master that is in the catalog. Okay, so another way of exporting is to use the published services. For instance, there is an option to upload to Facebook directly from inside of Lightroom, and we just need to click on the setup. We would need to log into Facebook and give Facebook authorization to accept images coming from this application. We could create an album that is either private or public, and then we can save that as a preset. And with this file, if we want to publish this to Facebook, we just simply click and drag and then hit publish, and nothing could be simpler than that. Okay, in the final section of the movie I want to show you how we can share our catalog work even when we don't have our computer with us. We can actually store part of our catalog or our entire catalog on an external drive, and then use another computer in order to access that catalog. Okay, so let's come back into my collection here of Tegan. I'll just collapse this publishing services and also the folders section there just to simplify the interface. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a collection, a catalog just from this collection. I don't need my friend to see my 50,000 images that I've been shooting over the last 6 months. I just want them to see these 5 images. I don't want to export them and take them as individual files, because I want to carry on maybe editing the files with a friend. It's also useful if we're trying to do this process by going to college, and maybe a lecturer is going to assist us in the editing process. Okay, so I'm just going to press the Shift F key just so I can hide this window momentarily. I still have my backup drive connected, and this isn't the one that I'm going to be taking off-site to college or my friends, so I'll just eject that drive. Now I've got a much smaller drive that I'll be now using. It's called an MSATA drive. It's very fast. but it'll allow me to quickly transfer a catalog over this, and it's a very portable device. And there it is, Mark Gayler MSATA, M being for mini. Okay, let's just get that catalog back into view. Okay, and we're going to right click on our collection here, Control, and choose export this collection as a catalog. The other way of doing this is to hold down the Alt or Option key, and you can see the export button will turn into an export catalog button. And we're going to save this onto the MSATA. Maybe we'll save it as assignment 2, and we'll just export this catalog. Now if we look at the options down here, we do have the option to export what's called the negative files. These are either the JPEGs or DNG files, the master files. But because we've been working with Smart Previews and we have this box checked here, it isn't actually necessary. The Smart Preview will give us a high definition preview on quite a large screen without needing the master file, and we can carry on editing that work. So I'm going to export this catalog without the master files or the negative files. And that catalog has now gone out to my MSATA drive. Let's close this working catalog. Okay, we'll quit Lightroom. We'll close the catalog. Now we have specified that we will be given an option to back up this catalog. Now backing up the catalog isn't backing up the image files, it's backing up the database files. Now we could choose a remote location. Okay, we could, for instance, choose to keep my backups on my MSATA drive, okay, in the 2015 folder. Okay, so I can choose to put my backups in there. Now if my MSATA drive isn't connected for whatever reason, then the backups will automatically go into the 2015 catalog folder on this laptop machine that I'm running here. So we'll back up and the file closes. Now let's say we've come to a different computer, okay, and we're going to open up my MSATA drive on maybe the college computer or my friend's computer, and we need to see the assignment 2 work. And unfortunately I put the assignment 2 work inside the assignment 1 folder. Let's just move that back out into the main working folder of this little drive, so that's not too confusing. And you'll see my assignment 2 catalog here. There's no image folder, okay, there is none of the master folders are present here, but we can now open this catalog just by double clicking. Now let's say I'm at a college, and the lecturer is looking at my work, and they look at this one and they say, well, this is really quite a beautiful file, Mark, but this was actually a color assignment. Maybe you didn't read the submission criteria closely enough. So let's just drop that back into the color version. Okay, before you submit that, that's quite important. Okay, also I noticed that in these files there's something quite distracting in the background here. It's something, a little bit of a picture hook possibly on the wall which is glinting in the light, and it's slightly distracting. My lecturer is experienced at working in the develop module, so wants me to give me some guidance here. So I'm going into the develop module, and I am shown this little tool here, which is the spot removal tool. And quite quickly I learned that I can remove some distracting element in the image just by clicking on it and having that information cloned from a different area of the image to hide that distracting detail. Okay, I'm also informed that this image might be improved by adding a small subtle vignette to it from the effects panel. So with a post-crop vignette, I can actually just darken off the edges of the image, and this draws the eye into the portrait or the face of the image. Okay, so we made a couple of changes to a couple of the images there, and now we close this catalog. Okay, and I bring my MSATA drive home. Okay, I want to open up my master catalog now. So holding down the Alt or Option key, I'm going to click on my Lightroom app icon. And this will give me the choice to either open up the Assignment 2 catalog that we previously had to open, or the 2015 master catalog for this year. So I'm going to open that catalog. You'll see it only takes 3 or 4 seconds to open a catalog inside of Lightroom. So having a few catalogs and switching between the two really is a painless process. Now what I'm going to be doing with this is I'm going to go into Grid View, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key, and I'm going to import the catalog that I was working off-site with, and it was the Assignment 2 catalog. Let's just select that and hit the Choose button there. Now it's giving me the option to preserve the old settings as virtual copy. Okay, this is actually quite a useful option here, because when we import, we'll see that 2 new images or versions of the images have been found. They're actually still the same image. We're still only got one master. But if we go to the Tegan collection now, what Lightroom has done is it's created a version, okay, of our image prior to the edits. You'll see this was the original one that I took perhaps to college, and this is the one that was edited with the vignette and the distracting information removed. Okay, going back to Grid View, press the G key, and you'll see that we have the black and white version that I'd done previously, but was then informed that it was actually to be a color image. And so this is the new version of that same image. Okay, these virtual copies are actually quite useful. Let's just take a look at my landscapes, for instance. I can click on this image, I can right click and choose Create Virtual Copy. I can then come into this image and maybe again choose to view this as a black and white version with perhaps much higher contrast. Let's just click that to make a real dramatic image. We go back into Grid View and we can see we have 2 versions of the same file. Now if I select both of those versions, I've just made both active, and we can do a side-by-side comparison of those 2 images. The image is a little bit small on the screen real estate, so I'll just press the Tab key to hide the left and right panels simultaneously. And now I can choose which version I prefer, the black and white or the color version. And if I'm perhaps leaning towards the black and white version, maybe I'll give this 1 star and go back into Grid View. And so this is the way we organize. We select our favorite images. I'll just press the Tab key to bring those 2 panels back. And we can also collate images from different shoots or capture dates via collections. Okay, so that wraps up the Lightroom or workflow catalog for beginners.